Also, one of the good Anons wanted me to do a video on interracial relationships. So hey, why not? This issue isn't as straightforward for me as you might have imagined. As a communist, I don't believe in preserving any sort of culture or national identity or ethnic identity. I am opposed to all forms of nationalism, even hyper-nationalism, which is what Stalin did. I never claimed that Stalin was the beacon of communism, and that he was a reactionary. It may have been required, there may have been no other hope but to be one, because I don't believe Trotsky would have been a much better option. Trotsky would have been a liberal Democrat, and that probably would be worse in some respects. But I don't really consider Stalin a communist. But I still will call him a communist to honor him and what he did for Russia and the communist ideology, but he was not really a communist. And my point is that as long as you adhere to this idea that we have to preserve our identity, our group identity, whether that's race, religion, or nationality, you fall into that trap of fascism. And, I do not want to advocate that when at all I can avoid it. But I know that there are differences in races biologically. Biologically, some races are more prone to different diseases than other ones. Whether they be physical or mental is up for debate, because we believe that mental diseases can be genetic, but it might have a lot to do with environment. Whereas with physical diseases, like say diabetes, is a Hispanic and black people thing. That is mostly what Hispanics and blacks get, but then again, that might be due to their culture. What do blacks and Hispanics typically eat? They eat a lot of high-fat, high-carbohydrate diets, like rice and beans and fried chicken and things like that. Not to say all of them do, but seeing as many of them are very traditional, very family-oriented, and have those values of preserving their cultural identity, they retain the same dietary guidelines and, habits of their grandparents and great-grandparents, and thus inherit the same diseases. So it's a complicated argument, because is it their culture that is killing them, or is it their biological makeup that is killing them? Or it might be a little bit of both. So it's not simple enough to say that, okay, black people have this flaw where they are more prone to this disease than, say, white people. But at the same time, I don't want to rule that out, because that's how biology works. That's how evolution works. I believe in evolution. So it would be counterproductive of me to say that humans are completely alike, even though you can just look at another human being and they are completely different from you. They look completely different. They act completely different. Their entire lives. You can get two identical twins, and they can grow up to be completely different people. I have uncles that are twins, and you would not recognize them. You would think that they were brothers, but that they weren't twins. They look different. They act different. They have different problems. So it's hard to determine where biology begins and culture ends. And that is what I believe is the main pinnacle of communism, is to do away with the cultural differences and the cultural norms and the cultural effects on humanity, and worry specifically about the biological differences. Now, if we were talking strictly biological, let's assume that, people are different racially, and that would affect the spawns of interracial mixing. Am I in favor of interracial mixing for the sake of interracial mixing, for the sake of the biology of it? Let's not get into the culture. Let's not get into how we should integrate into this melting pot, etc., or as you guys like to call it, cultural Marxism. Because let's face it, liberalism does not really want to negate all cultural identity. They're not trying to get you to mix so that nobody has an identity as a group. There is no black, no white. That's not what they want. What they want is for everyone to respect one another's differences. There's a difference between trying to pretend that all these different cultures and identities can get along, as opposed to they are full of conflict and hate and class warfare, and we need to get rid of them. Liberals don't want to get rid of them. They want to pretend that they can all get along. That is the main difference between liberalism and communism. And until you figure that out, you're going to keep going around in circles talking about cultural Marxism and sounding like fucking Glenn Beck. So, anyway, let's break it down to the pure biological level of, okay, you get this black guy and you get this white woman, or this white guy and this black woman, you mix them together. What does that mean genetically? Well, I figure it means you're probably going to get a little from column A and you're probably going to get a little from column B. Is that specifically good? Well, in Darwinian principle it is, because it prevents humanity from ever growing stagnant. If you continue to breed within your own race, you're going to get the same problems over and over again. And as Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Your race is not perfect. Your genetic material is not perfect. So you need chaos. You need that roll of the dice to keep yourself moving forward, because there are going to be new diseases and your immune system might not be prepared for it. So you might want to consider mixing it up a little with the other races. Now, do I believe that chaos for the sake of chaos is good either? No, not particularly. I don't think that we have to purposely try to mix with somebody else that, we don't particularly want to. Like, I'm not going to go out there and mix with somebody completely opposite of my racial origins, just because I think that'll magically make a child that is better biologically. It doesn't work that way. Eugenics doesn't work. And I used to be pro-eugenics when I was younger. So I know what I'm talking about here, that social Darwinism is a pitfall. It is a pitfall of tyranny, of suspicion, of paranoia, and it doesn't accomplish anything. There is no way you can predetermine the human condition through biology. Humans don't work like that. Humans are an animal of the mind. They're primarily a thinking animal. Most of what is bad around us is due to human thought, not due to our genetics. So I am not going to put all this faith and all this burden on the future of humanity in who you fuck and who you reproduce with and what those offspring origins are genetically, So, and I'm sure there's something to it. I'm not saying that, there might not be a key. There might be ways to ensure that people can be more intelligent and more physically fit and less likely to get sick and last longer and age slower if, we follow certain guidelines. But that's a lot of stress, and that's a lot of work to put into something that we wouldn't even have to worry about anyway if we just got rid of all these fucking cultural, flops. If we got rid of all these fucking nationalism and having to preserve our race versus their race, and, and fucking letting bourgeoisie assholes control the assets and control the means of production, and this guy owns something but that guy doesn't, but he can't bitch about it even though he doesn't own anything and doesn't get a say in anything, and bullshit like that. That's what is important. It's not important, where your genetic material originated from or who you are genetically. All that matters is what's going on up here. All that matters is philosophically, are you moving forward or are you moving backward? So, that's why I really haven't talked about this issue as of yet, because it's just not something that comes to mind. Now, mind you, it should be something I talk about, because as someone with the eccentric position that I have about women being in breeding facilities and only being used primarily to breed to get pregnant, have as many babies as they physically can, and until their uterus just fizzles out and, rots, they are to make as many babies, and then they can be integrated back into society. So yeah, you would think with that kind of position, eugenics would be on my list, but not really, because you forget why I want women to reproduce constantly. It's because I believe in production, and if you have women making babies all of the time, that means more steel workers, more doctors, more scientists, more soldiers, and we continue to reproduce and reproduce, and we expand and we conquer, and eventually we can make a perfect society, not only for ourselves, but the entire universe. And that's very idealistic, but it's realistic, because if you follow the guidelines and you look at it piece by piece of if you're working together and under unity and not distracted by cultural identity or, any kind of religious identity, and you are just the human race and you're maximizing your production value and you're moving forward with this benevolent idea that we can save everybody, then I see no reason why you couldn't do it. And so I don't think we need to worry about eugenics, even though it could potentially play a part. And as far as would I either force people to have sex with one of their breeders if they so wanted to, like would I force them to have sex with a woman they didn't want to have sex with? Well, I'm sure they could come to their own conclusions. I'm sure they could have their pick. They could window shop throughout all the women and figure out one of the ones they wanted to impregnate. And, there is no way, I don't think there's any realistic way I'm going to come across a guy that just doesn't want to have sex with any sort of female whatsoever. That is a cultural trait. That sort of militant homosexuality is something that is implemented because they were abused as a child, they were abused by women, they were rejected so often that they convinced themselves they don't like women, because I find it extremely hard to believe that any male would not want to implant his seed into a woman. And I'm not going to worry about, controlling who he has sex with, only that he has sex. He does need to reproduce, but, it's not important who he reproduces with. And, he only needs to do that every so often anyway. Because, he's going to be a man. He's going to be out there working. He's going to be welding. He's going to be doctoring. He's going to be doing whatever he's doing. And in between that, he can worry about implanting his seed into a female uterus. So I don't really think issues like that would come up in my ideal society. And if I ever get done with this book, I wrote in a short story version, but it doesn't really cover all these issues, and I'm working it over, I'm checking the spelling and everything, and I'm trying to clean it up, and then I'll probably produce it in an ebook, where it's basically like Robert Heinlein's Starship Troopers, but on the left. I really like Starship Troopers, but I believe it was far too right-wing in its attitude, at least in the movie. And I would love to see like a left-wing version that focuses on integrating all cultures and all societies into one giant conglomerate, into one giant body, a pure vanguard society that only worries about moving all species forward. And in fact, that's what the book would be about. It's not even about humans. It's about humans having the ideology to save other aliens from themselves. And while they do that, they happen to worry about survival and, making sure they can get by, and worrying about the issues of space travel and how vicious space is. And it talks about how nature is cruel and unresourceful, and it takes from you, and it's just death and destruction. Mankind has a lot on its plate. We have to fight over nature because nature instinctively wants to kill us and wants to suppress us, and we have to fight with evil men who want to kill us and suppress us because they are backward, because they have given in into the wrong ideas, and they live their lives in the wrong way, and they are corrupt. And we have to worry about other beings that may or may not exist out there that we have to save. We have to save them from themselves. We have to save them from that corruption and from nature. Nature is bad. Man is instinctively bad. But because we are beings of reason, we can overcome it. That's what it really comes down to. That's really what the book and what my philosophy is about. That we are surrounded by evil, but it is our state of mind, our capability of reason that gives us the opportunity to pierce through all of it and actually have a good world and a good universe. So that's pretty much what I believe about the whole subject of interracial marriages, interracial dating, interracial sex, and I think that pretty much covers the issue. So I guess that's it.